Hey TV fans, Bored Now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about Alien Earth Season 1 Episode 2. The episode is called Mr. October and I will be diving into full spoilers as always. Summing up my thoughts on this episode, I think I liked it a bit more than Episode 1, and the main reason is because there's more of a focus than Episode 1. That episode probably struggled a bit because it was setting up quite a lot and balancing quite a lot. So it was, although I came away quite positive on that one, it was a bit harder to get into the flow of things. So this is a much more solid episode from that point of view. And once again, for me, the strong stuff, the really strong stuff anyway, is the Wendy stuff and how we continue to follow her plot, because she's the one who I think we can really invest in and care about at this point. And I do think for the most part they're doing a good job with that stuff, and she's quite an engrossing character. And we progress things in this episode with her and Joe. I think there is stakes there. Once again, there's some good horror moments in this episode, and one that stands out particularly, which is a good bit of direction, is when Marlon, who is on the run in hiding in this episode, arrested by the military, and he's trying to warn them about the xenomorph. It pops up behind the guy. The xenomorph is about to jump out at Joe, or does jump out at him, and Marlon saves him at the last minute with a taser. So then he is kind of dragging it along in the bag, which is a bit of a quirky, weird visual. The military holds him up at gunpoint, and he's got this thing in the bag, and they're like, well, that's suspicious. What's in the bag? And they also work out that he's a synthetic life form. He's a cyborg. So again, they're even more suspicious. And he's like, trust me, you don't want to mess with this. And of course they don't listen, so they back him up against the wall, and he's got his back to them. And it's this perfect shot of when the creature comes out of the bag and attacks them, and you get the splatter, and you're seeing it from the POV. Well, not the POV, but you see it from the front of Marlon and his reactions, and it's a really nice shot. So once again, the horror stuff is well done in this episode. I think I've got a couple of problems. Once again, I think there are a couple of cheesy on the nose lines. Once again, I'm not very impressed with Boy. I figured out his name, Boy Cavell. I probably said it in episode 1, but they are playing him off as a little bit too much of a tech bro, almost like a definitely Jesse Eisenberg vibes in this episode particularly, where I think you meant to have the feeling that, okay, he's a little bit quirky, he's a little bit misunderstood maybe, or at least he thinks he's misunderstood, but at the same time he's very sort of douchey and jerky, and yeah, he feels like this rich, spoiled sort of little kid.
Don't believe it? My father named the company after himself. He was the Lex in front of the Corp. How you doing?
Oh, really great.
Really great? Good. Follow me. So, Dad started saying that he named the company after his kid at investor pitches. Rich old ladies. They thought it was very cute, you know? Write checks for Lex.
For that sort of character, that's just not right. Like, that can work in other things, but for this character, I don't think it's really right, and I want a little bit more from him. I want a little bit more of a bite, or a little bit more of a menace. It's quite an interesting discussion with him and his right-hand woman at some point. I'm not quite sure what her role is, but she's one of the main people in the setup, and we see that she's the one who's starting to have more feelings of, is this really right to treat like clones like this, to treat like synthetic life forms like this? Maybe they should live their own life, and almost having some sort of humanity about it. And Boy is very, what a ridiculous name, Boy, but he's very detached when it comes to this stuff and is very focused on what he sees as the project. He has a telephone conversation with one of the other owners, because we've established, and there's 2 or 3 different factions who have, like corporations, who have like a vested interest in the aliens and the research, and there's just a bit of a set to on the telephone with him and one of the other owners where he says, it's our territory, let's not, if you overstep your mark, we might have to rethink our agreement. So that's not particularly interesting. We get more of the Timothy Operate character searching through the ship with his crew. At one point he gets separated by Wendy, of course, because she run off in the previous episode. And they start seeing the tubes and the different signs of different life forms, and you get some exposition explaining things here and there, which isn't that interesting. But the focus does become Wendy, because they hear about her potentially finding Joe, and at one point she messages them and they find out that, she's found Joe. Because my other complaint with this, and some of these scenes work a bit better than others, but I do think there's too many flashbacks in this episode, because you get a flashback to Joe in the past with his father watching baseball, so just filling in a little bit more of a backstory, which you don't necessarily need. It probably feels a bit out of place on this sort of show. You also get a couple more flashbacks with like Wendy from the past. The one that makes the most sense is you get one where she's clearly trying to contact Joe, or she's watching Joe on like a monitor, and it's not long after his dad has died, and he's asking for more resources from this computerized voice, like almost like a support, I guess, like a benefit like we would have in the real world here. But he's requesting for it, saying, my dad recently passed away. And you can see it's very hard for Wendy to watch this, and the actress again is doing a great job. Like, she's got a very sympathetic face. And I like this scene because you also see the point of view of like the corporation and Boy and the others, and they're watching in, and they question, was it really a good idea for her to get for us to give access to Wendy to Joe? He actually finds a way to briefly contact Joe, like she's almost talking to him through the machine and reaching out to him, and that's when they start panicking and they cut off the signal, basically. So that flashback, I think, had a purpose. It was a little bit more context and an example of Wendy struggling with this stuff and trying to reach out to Joe, and an example of them trying to cut that off. So I would say the Wendy Joe stuff I pretty much all like in this episode. He does find out who she is in the episode. Like, he finds out, I'm your sister. Because this other character who I did find a bit annoying and one note, but he's one of the Lost Boys who's paired off with Wendy in this episode, and they find Joe together. He actually blunts it out with Wendy and Joe, because when she gets contacted from I forget the character's name, but the Timothy Operate character, she said, hey, we've got this thing, like aliens are out there, we're part of the rescue mission, would you like to come with us? And he says yes. And so it's that thing of, okay, I've just found him, and the Operate character has been told by Boy, hey, get her away from Joe, we don't want this to go down. And they sort of get to know each other along the way, and he starts to test her with like questions from the past, and of course she knows the answers, she remembers everything, and that's a good scene. I did enjoy that stuff. I do think the actor who's playing Joe is a little bit one note at times, because there's this scene where he realizes like Wendy is his sister, and he gets emotional and hugs. Because up to that point, I think the actor's been pretty solid in what he's done and what he's had to do. He's sort of fitted the role quite nicely, but it's just when it comes to emotional stuff, like he doesn't really have the same range as the Wendy actress. He is the stronger actor when it comes to like conveying emotion. She has the knack of, because she is a synthetic life form, of being able to convey emotions, but in quite a subtle way, in quite a way where you believe she is also under control, like, and she is like this machine-like sort of being. A bit like, I'm not saying it's as good as this performance, but a bit like Brent Spiner as Data in Star Trek. A little bit along those lines. Alex Laura, his name is, the actor who plays Joe. I think he's good for the most part in the role, but at the same time, when it came to this scene where he had to show like an outburst of emotion, he didn't quite have it for me, at least. But most of the Wendy and Joe stuff I did enjoy in the episode. Probably one of the other small complaints so far is that maybe in this episode you get a bit too much of the xenomorph and the aliens in general. Like, maybe they could build a little bit more to that, and it feels like they just want suspenseful horror scenes, and maybe you're just going to get a bit more of it because it's a TV show, so there's a little bit more of it. And those scenes are well done, so I'm not going to complain too much, but like, maybe they could sprinkle them in a little bit more. In the previous episode, I think you do have a good sort of hook for episode 3, because the xenomorph attacks them and Joe panics and he goes over the edge of this ship, basically. I can't remember where they are. It's either some building or some sort of ship. It must be one of the buildings, but he goes through this hatch and falls down, and they're not quite sure what's happened to him. And that's where Wendy's conflicted, because she's being contacted by the Timothy Othaway character, and she says, no, I'm going to go after Joe. And I think she tells the other guy, the lost boy, to stay there and kind of hold them up, you know, distract them while I go and try and find Joe. So she runs off and goes after him. We see her looking over the edge, and yeah, I think it's quite a punchy way to end the episode. So the episode definitely ended on a high point. There's also this random scene which is very cartoony, and this is definitely one scene where they overstepped the mark when it came to, okay, we're just doing a comedic beat, but it didn't really fit the tone of what you want in an Alien series, because you have like a fancy dress party and you've got this very snooty type guy who is dressed up as Mozart, basically, Amadeus, and so the military, it's such a weird scene to have in this kind of show, but the military like bang on his door, like the military as ordered by Boy. They bang on his door and says, hey, we're evacuating the building, because he even tells him there's like aliens in the lobby almost, which is a great thing to tell someone at this party. And this guy doesn't seem bothered at all. Like, he's very snooty to the military guy. He's very much like, well, I know, Boy, and I'm sure it's nothing. If he tells me to evacuate, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it based on your orders. And he kind of shuts the door on him and goes back to the party. I mean, I guess it's just goes to the character and how kind of snobby he is, and like he's too good for this. But even so, I mean, if a military guy shows up at your building and says this, you can't imagine he's making it up for like a prank. And I think it is just for the comedy beat of, in the next instance, all shit breaks loose and the aliens are in the, like, literally outside the door pretty much, and they're wrecking all sorts of havoc. So that it's just for the comedy beat of, you see this guy dressed as Amadeus who starts running out of his door screaming, basically. It's like, yeah, you were warned. So you know, whatever. It's just a weird scene to have in the show like this. So you are getting moments like that which I think drag it down a little bit, but overall, I'm having a solid time with it, and I would say this episode was a step up from episode 1. So that's Alien Earth episode 2. Let me know what you guys think of the episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. If you want to support the channel monetarily, there's, well, 2 or 3 ways really. You can support me on patreon.com/borednow. Over there you get early access to movie and TV reviews, or early access to videos. You also get exclusive clips that don't appear on YouTube, and you will get some special TV or film commentaries and reactions, and there'll be a bunch of them coming in October. Or you can support me on a channel membership. There's 3 different tiers for that. And you will get some of the same stuff you do on Patreon, but there will also be stuff that you don't get. So maybe if you want to dig into channel memberships, that might be worth your time. Or you can just make a one-off donation. And there's 2 ways you can do that. I've got a PayPal account linked to my channel, so you can do it on PayPal. Or you could just hit the super thanks button on this video if you want to make a one-off donation that way. But thanks for supporting the channel. Keep watching TV, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.